Imagine being accused of something so profoundly life-altering that it could define you in the eyes of your family, your community, and even the law itself. Imagine sitting in a room like this, your every move scrutinized, every breath feeling like a betrayal to your own innocence. How would you respond if you were stripped of control, forced to defend not only your actions but the very essence of your character? And what if, as the walls closed in around you, the truth you fought so hard to protect turned out to be more shocking than anyone dared expect? This is her story, or so it seems. A mother seeking justice, demanding recognition for her child, and pointing her finger at the man she says abandoned them both. It's a tale we've heard before. One might even say it's predictable. But as the first words are spoken and the case begins to unravel, the courtroom becomes a stage for something far more complex. What starts as a paternity case soon twists into a battle of perceptions, a clash between facts, biases, and the haunting specter of prejudice. This is not just a story about parentage. It's about trust, betrayal, and the murky waters of truth in a system that's supposed to deliver justice. Stay with us to enjoy more details about this story. Like, share, comment, and subscribe. He denies her claims, not just in words but with every fiber of his being. To him, this accusation is not just false, it's a weapon aimed to destroy. And yet the evidence she presents appears damning. Witnesses come forward, photographs are shown, and the child's resemblance is impossible to ignore. But something doesn't feel right. The room, heavy with tension, begins to shift as the judge asks questions that no one was prepared to answer. Questions that peel back the layers of this case, exposing truths that are as uncomfortable as they are undeniable. Over the next hour, we'll take you through every twist and turn of this case, a journey that begins with a single accusation and ends with revelations no one saw coming. This is about more than a DNA test or a courtroom battle. It's about the cracks in a system we trust to deliver justice. It's about the assumptions we make about guilt and innocence, and how those assumptions can blind us to the truth. What happens when the lines between victim and accused blur so completely that even the judge struggles to see where justice lies? Tonight, you'll witness a case that challenges everything we think we know about fairness and truth. A case where every piece of evidence, every whispered word, and every silent glance carries a deeper meaning. This is not just about what happens in the courtroom. It's about what happens when the search for justice forces us to confront our own prejudices. Do you believe the system is always fair? Or do you, like so many others, wonder if justice sometimes comes at a cost too high to pay? Tell us, what would you do if the truth you fought to protect became the one thing that could destroy you? Stay with us. The courtroom was tense with an air of anticipation. The plaintiff, a young woman in her late 20s, sat at the plaintiff's table, her expression a mix of determination and weariness. She was clutching a folder that she had labeled evidence, the very weight of which seemed symbolic of her struggle as a single mother fighting for what she believed her child was owed. Her lawyer, a seasoned family court attorney, whispered reassurances, though the whispers barely masked the underlying tension in his tone. Across from her sat the defendant, a black man in his early 30s who appeared calm but resolute, his broad shoulders set as if bracing against an invisible tide. His face betrayed neither anger nor fear, only a quiet conviction. Beside him, his attorney methodically shuffled through case files, preparing to challenge the plaintiff's claims. His defense was not just about disproving paternity, but also about challenging a system he believed had already cast its verdict based on stereotypes and preconceived notions. At the bench presided Judge Eleanor Hartwell, a woman in her 50s known for her no-nonsense demeanor and methodical approach to justice. With her sharp features and piercing gaze, She was a figure both respected and feared. Judge Hartwell had seen hundreds of child support cases over her career, yet something about this one struck a chord. Perhaps it was the societal undercurrents at play or the defendant's unwavering proclamation of innocence, but she resolved to uncover every layer of the truth. The plaintiff, Sarah Turner, spoke first. A retail worker juggling multiple shifts, she described how she met the defendant, Marcus Reed, at a social gathering almost 2 years ago. She claimed their brief encounter led to a pregnancy and now a child she was raising on her own. Her words painted a picture of hardship, of unpaid bills, sleepless nights, and a gnawing fear of what the future held for her child. "I'm not asking for more than what's fair," Sarah said, her voice quivering. "My child deserves support from both parents." On the other side, Marcus's lawyer rose to speak. "Your Honor," he began, "my client has never met Ms. Turner before receiving the notice of this lawsuit. He is prepared to cooperate fully, but he categorically denies these allegations. We believe this case is not only baseless, but indicative of a larger issue." Marcus nodded as his lawyer sat down, his calm exterior masking the frustration building beneath. The system, he knew, had a history of painting black men as absentee fathers without thoroughly examining the facts. He wasn't just fighting for his innocence. He was challenging a narrative that had plagued men like him for generations. As the trial progressed, the courtroom began to wrestle with uncomfortable truths about the systemic biases inherent in family court cases. Research introduced by Marcus's attorney revealed startling statistics. Black men were disproportionately targeted in paternity cases, and courts often assumed guilt without substantial evidence. These patterns, the attorney argued, were rooted in racial stereotypes that placed undue burdens on individuals like Marcus. The plaintiff's lawyer pushed back, arguing that these larger social issues had no bearing on the facts of the case. "This is about one man, one child, and one mother seeking fairness," he stated. Yet the weight of those broader injustices could not be ignored, lingering like a shadow over the proceedings. The turning point came when Judge Hartwell requested a DNA test to settle the matter definitively. Both parties agreed, though the tension in the room was palpable as they awaited the results. In the interim, the judge delved deeper into the plaintiff's evidence, examining text messages, photographs, and receipts that Sarah claimed connected her to Marcus. While some pieces of evidence appeared credible, others raised questions about their origin and authenticity. When the DNA results finally arrived, the courtroom braced itself. The results would either confirm Marcus's claims of innocence or validate Sarah's pursuit of justice. But as the envelope was handed to Judge Hartwell, her expression shifted from neutral to perplexed. "I have reviewed the results," she began, her tone measured, "and it appears there is no biological match between Mr. Reed and the child in question." The room erupted in murmurs, with Sarah visibly stunned and Marcus letting out an audible sigh of relief. But Judge Hartwell was not done. "I must also address inconsistencies in the plaintiff's evidence," the judge continued. "Based on our investigation, it appears that some of the documents submitted may have been altered." What came next shocked everyone. Upon further investigation, it was revealed that Sarah had been pressured into filing the lawsuit by a third party, a former partner who had falsely identified Marcus in a bid to avoid his own responsibilities. Sarah's financial desperation had made her vulnerable, and she tearfully admitted to believing what she had been told without verifying it herself. The courtroom fell silent as Judge Hartwell issued her final ruling, admonishing the misuse of the court's resources while expressing sympathy for Sarah's plight. For Marcus, the ordeal was a vindication but also a stark reminder of how fragile justice could be when viewed through the lens of systemic bias. As the session adjourned, Marcus approached Sarah, offering words of compassion rather than anger. "I hope you and your child find the support you need," he said, before walking away, his dignity intact, his name cleared, and the system forced to confront its flaws. This story encapsulates the emotional complexity of human lives intersecting with societal structures, leaving the audience to reflect on the delicate balance between justice, truth, and the biases we must continually challenge. The courtroom fell into a tense silence as the case officially began. The plaintiff's attorney rose to deliver the opening statement, their voice firm and deliberate. They painted Sarah Turner as a hard-working, devoted mother who had struggled against insurmountable odds to provide for her child. The argument was simple. Sarah was seeking accountability from a man who, she claimed, had shirked his responsibilities and left her to bear the financial burden alone. "Your Honor, this is not about race or stereotypes," the attorney began, addressing the elephant in the room before it could overshadow the facts. "This is about justice for a child who deserves support. My client has suffered enough, and we're here to ensure that the person responsible steps up." The defendant's attorney wasted no time countering this narrative. Rising with an air of confidence, he presented Marcus Reed not only as a man wrongfully accused, but also as a symbol of systemic injustice. "This case, Your Honor, is about more than the plaintiff's claims," he said. "It is about ensuring that justice is not swayed by bias or assumptions. My client has categorically denied these allegations and has complied with every court order to prove his innocence. The evidence, or lack thereof, will show that he has been dragged into this case without cause." The judge nodded, her expression unreadable, as both sides settled in for what promised to be a contentious battle. Sarah was the first to take the stand, her voice steady but tinged with emotion. She described how she met Marcus, how their brief relationship had led to her pregnancy, and how he had vanished from her life the moment responsibility loomed. Her testimony was punctuated with tears as she recounted sleepless nights, unpaid bills, and the immense pressure of raising a child alone. "I'm not here because I want to be," Sarah said, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. "I'm here because I have no choice. My child deserves a better life, and I can't do it alone." The courtroom listened intently, though murmurs rippled through the audience as Sarah's narrative unfolded. Some found her story compelling. Others questioned the gaps in her timeline. Marcus sat motionless, his hands clasped tightly in front of him, his eyes fixed on the floor. When it was his turn to testify, Marcus spoke with calm resolve. He described how the accusation had upended his life, costing him a promotion, straining his relationships, and subjecting him to the court of public opinion. He didn't focus on the plaintiff. Instead, he spoke broadly about the stigma Black men often face in situations like this. "I've worked hard to build a life I'm proud of," he said, his voice steady but firm. "And yet, all it takes is one accusation to tear it all down. I respect the court and the process, but I also hope you'll see me for who I am, a man who values truth, fairness, and integrity." The judge's eyes lingered on him for a moment longer than usual, as if weighing his words against the evidence yet to come. As the trial continued, both sides presented their evidence, but it quickly became clear that this would not be a straightforward case. Sarah's attorney submitted photographs, text messages, and financial documents she claimed connected Marcus to her and her child. But Marcus's legal team was ready, poking holes in the evidence and raising questions about its authenticity. The turning point came when the results of the DNA test were introduced. The courtroom held its collective breath as the envelope was handed to the judge. But as Judge Hartwell opened it, her expression darkened. "It appears the results are inconclusive," she announced, her tone sharp. "The lab has reported a mishandling of the sample, which compromises its validity." The news landed like a thunderclap. Both sides erupted in murmurs, and the judge had to bang her gavel to restore order. The inconclusive results left the case teetering on uncertainty, with no clear path forward. The defendant's attorney seized the moment to question the plaintiff's motivations. Subpoenaed financial records revealed that Sarah was deep in debt, which raised questions about whether this lawsuit was a genuine attempt to seek justice or a desperate bid for financial relief. Sarah's attorney objected, accusing the defense of character assassination, but the damage was done. The doubt lingered. The courtroom's tension mirrored the growing debate outside its walls. Reporters covering the case speculated wildly, while public opinion split down the middle. Social media lit up with heated discussions as viewers debated who was telling the truth and whether the system was capable of delivering justice. The case became a microcosm of broader societal issues, sparking conversations about race, gender, and the often overlooked struggles of single mothers. It was no longer just about Sarah and Marcus, it was about what they represented to a divided public. Who do you believe so far? Let us know in the comments. The trial wasn't over yet, and the stakes were higher than ever. The judge's next steps would determine not just the fate of the two individuals before her, but also the fate of the audience watching from the sidelines, hoping for a resolution that would bring clarity to a case steeped in uncertainty. The courtroom, already heavy with tension, took on an even more charged atmosphere as Judge Hartwell announced a short recess. Yet, this was no ordinary pause in proceedings. The judge's demeanor had changed, sharp, precise, and laced with quiet determination. It was clear that something wasn't adding up in the case presented before her. What began as a seemingly straightforward matter of paternity and child support now hinted at layers of complexities yet to be uncovered. Overnight, Judge Hartwell had delved into the evidence on her own terms. A seasoned arbiter with a reputation for thoroughness, she began piecing together the inconsistencies that neither legal team had fully addressed. Sarah Turner's timeline was curiously vague, her story laced with contradictions that didn't sit right. Marcus Reed, on the other hand, had raised valid concerns about systemic bias, but he too seemed to be holding something back. Hartwell's first step was to examine Sarah's financial records further. On the surface, her debt seemed to support her narrative of hardship, but cross-referencing bank statements revealed an intriguing twist. Large, unexplained deposits made over the past year. The amounts didn't align with her reported income, and they raised a critical question. Who was helping her, and why? The judge also scrutinized text messages and email exchanges between Sarah and Marcus. Most were one-sided, with Sarah sending messages that Marcus had left unanswered. But a closer look revealed something curious. Some of the messages seemed strangely formal, almost as if they had been written with an audience in mind. A chilling realization began to form. Was Sarah building a case long before she filed her lawsuit? When court resumed, Judge Hartwell's first action was to subpoena additional records, including communication between Sarah and a third party mentioned briefly in her testimony, a man she claimed was her confidant during her time of need. The defense objected, arguing it was irrelevant, but the judge's insistence carried weight. What came next stunned everyone. The third party, a man named Greg Walters, was revealed to be not only Sarah's ex-boyfriend but also someone with a history of manipulating court cases for financial gain. Testimonies from prior cases indicated a disturbing pattern. Greg had encouraged women to file lawsuits against former partners, offering to coach them through the process in exchange for a cut of the settlements. Marcus's attorney wasted no time in connecting the dots. Was Sarah a willing participant in Greg's schemes, or had she been coerced? Either way, it called into question the authenticity of her claims and the motivations driving her actions. For dramatic effect, a reenactment of Sarah and Greg's alleged partnership was introduced during the trial, based on corroborating statements from other women who had been involved with Greg. The reenactment showed how financial desperation could make individuals susceptible to exploitation, highlighting the broader systemic failures that left single mothers vulnerable. Marcus's legal team also produced evidence of Sarah's social media activity, a private account where she had posted cryptic updates about finally getting what she deserved and turning the tables. The tone of these posts suggested not only personal frustration, but also a vendetta that extended beyond the immediate circumstances. Sarah's attorney attempted damage control, arguing that her actions, however misguided, stemmed from genuine financial need. But the cracks in her story were impossible to ignore. As the case unraveled, it became more than just a legal battle. It became a referendum on deeper societal issues. Commentators on both sides of the debate weighed in, sparking nationwide discussions about racial stereotyping, gender dynamics, and the exploitative nature of certain legal systems. For Marcus, the case was emblematic of the broader struggles Black men face when navigating accusations in a system often skewed against them. Public discourse shifted toward the stereotypes that had followed him since the case began. He had been labeled irresponsible, untrustworthy, and even predatory without concrete evidence. On the other hand, Sarah's plight shed light on the difficult realities single mothers face. While her motivations were now under scrutiny, many sympathized with the systemic barriers she had faced as a woman trying to secure stability for her child. The issue wasn't just about her actions, but about the broader systems that left individuals like her feeling trapped. The revelations also prompted conversations about accountability, how individuals, regardless of their circumstances, must be held to ethical standards, and how society must address the systemic failures that lead to such desperate measures. The courtroom audience was riveted, and so was the public. Social media erupted with debates. Was Sarah a victim of manipulation or complicit in the scheme? Was Marcus's ordeal a reflection of larger systemic failings? Or was he merely in the wrong place at the wrong time? What do you think of the judge's findings so far? Viewers were asked. Are you surprised by the revelations about Sarah's financial ties? Let us know in the comments. The drama wasn't over yet. The judge had promised a final round of questioning that would bring the truth to light once and for all. What would Sarah say in her defense? And how would Marcus respond to the mounting evidence that seemed to exonerate him? As the courtroom braced for the final act, one thing was clear. This case would leave no one unchanged. As the final day of the trial drew near, the atmosphere in the courtroom was thick with anticipation. The judge, having meticulously examined all the evidence, now prepared to deliver her verdict. The trial had been a roller coaster of revelations, twists, and unexpected turns, but now it was time for the truth to be revealed. Judge Hartwell stepped to the bench, her stern gaze scanning the room, before announcing the conclusion that would shake everyone in the courtroom to their core. Judge Hartwell began by carefully outlining the case's trajectory. The inconsistencies in Sarah Turner's testimony, the hidden financial interests tied to her ex-boyfriend Greg Walters, and the shocking revelations surrounding her social media activity, all had culminated in one irrefutable truth. Sarah's claims lacked credibility. The evidence presented here, Judge Hartwell said, her voice steady yet decisive, has shown that the plaintiff has not only failed to substantiate her accusations with valid proof, but she has also engaged in manipulative actions that undermine the integrity of this court. The child support claim was built on false pretenses, and while I sympathize with the challenges that single mothers face, the facts in this case cannot be overlooked. The judge then turned to Marcus Reed. Mr. Reed, you have been subjected to a grave injustice. The court recognizes the weight of racial prejudice you've been forced to endure throughout this case, and the clear impact it has had on your life. In the absence of credible evidence, and in light of the plaintiff's failure to substantiate her claims, the court finds in your favor. A wave of disbelief swept through the courtroom. Sarah, visibly shaken, sat in stunned silence, her lawyer sitting beside her with a look of resignation. Marcus, though relieved, appeared emotionally exhausted, his shoulders heavy with the weight of the battle he had just won. For Marcus, the ruling was bittersweet. While the legal victory was a long overdue acknowledgement of his innocence, it didn't erase the emotional scars that had been inflicted upon him throughout the trial. In the court of public opinion, he had been tried and convicted long before the legal proceedings had even begun. The damage to his reputation, fueled by racial stereotypes, would take years to repair. Outside the courtroom, the media quickly shifted from sensationalizing the accusation to focusing on the ramifications of the verdict. Marcus found himself both a symbol of resilience and a reminder of the deep-rooted biases that continue to plague the justice system. He was grateful for the truth being acknowledged, but the process had opened old wounds that would take time to heal. Despite the victory, his life had been irrevocably altered. Sarah, on the other hand, faced the weight of public humiliation. The court's findings had exposed her manipulative actions and her connection to Greg Walters. While she had initially portrayed herself as a struggling single mother simply seeking financial support, the truth of her motivations left her credibility in tatters. Her lawyer, once optimistic about the case's potential, now found himself facing the fallout of a severely damaged client. For Sarah, the emotional toll was immense. Her motivations, once believed to be rooted in a desperate need for support, were now exposed as part of a much larger scheme. The public response to the verdict was unrelenting, with many condemning her actions as an abuse of the system, while others questioned how someone could fall prey to the influence of individuals like Greg Walters. Yet, despite the shame that surrounded her, Sarah would need to face the consequences of her actions, both in the legal and social spheres. While the individual stories of Marcus and Sarah would eventually fade into the past, the case had shined a light on a broader issue: the flaws in the system that allowed such a situation to arise in the first place. The case highlighted the potential for exploitation in child support cases, where accusations, particularly when tied to financial incentives, can quickly spiral out of control. For Marcus, the victory wasn't just about clearing his name. It was a call for change. The case had brought to light the ease with which individuals, particularly black men, can become targets of false accusations within a system that often fails to protect them adequately. Racial bias, whether overt or subtle, had played a significant role in shaping public perception and in how the case was initially handled. As the media coverage of the case spread, activists and legal reform advocates began pushing for changes in the family court system. Proposals were made to improve how accusations in child support cases are handled, particularly to ensure that financial motivations behind claims are properly scrutinized. Calls for racial sensitivity training for judges and court personnel became louder, as did the demand for better systems to detect and prevent manipulation by individuals like Greg Walters. The case also sparked conversations about the deeper societal issues at play: how women, especially single mothers, are sometimes pushed into desperate situations, and how the justice system, when flawed, can be used to exploit those vulnerabilities. Reform advocates rallied for better support for low-income families, more thorough vetting in family court cases, and protections for those who are wrongfully accused of crimes. As the case closed and its aftermath unfolded, public discourse became increasingly vocal. What does this case teach us about fairness and stereotypes? The media asked. How can we prevent similar situations from arising in the future? The comments section exploded with responses, some expressing relief that justice had been served, others deeply troubled by how easily the system had been manipulated. Many echoed the call for reforms, urging lawmakers to address the underlying issues that had allowed such an injustice to occur. Viewers at home, and those following the case in the courtroom, were forced to confront the reality of systemic inequalities and the lengths to which some would go to exploit the vulnerable. Whether they agreed with the verdict or not, the case had sparked important discussions about fairness, accountability, and the biases that too often color our judgments. In the end, while Marcus Reed's victory in court represented a triumph of truth, it was clear that the ripples of this case would continue to affect not only those directly involved, but the larger society. The courtroom had acted as a microcosm of the biases, prejudices, and challenges that still lurk beneath the surface of everyday life. A stark reminder that true justice requires not only legal proceedings, but a commitment to fairness, accountability, and reform. As the final chapter of this gripping case unfolds, it is time to reflect on the emotional and societal layers that this trial has peeled back. The courtroom battle between Marcus Reed and Sarah Turner wasn't just a legal clash. It was a symbol of the larger struggles many face within a system marred by prejudice, manipulation, and inequality. This case, and its aftermath, highlights what happens when the pursuit of truth is clouded by the weight of bias, both racial and social. For Marcus Reed, the road to justice was far from easy. He entered that courtroom not only fighting against false accusations, but also carrying the burden of stereotypes that have plagued black men for generations. His victory was not just about clearing his name, it was about breaking the chains of societal prejudice that had tried to bind him. The scars left by the trial will remain with him for years to come, but his resilience, courage, and faith in the truth became a beacon of hope for others who have faced similar battles in silence. But this case wasn't just about one man or one woman. It was about what happens when the truth is overshadowed by prejudice. When racial stereotypes dictate the way a person is perceived, their worth and their truth, the entire system fails. The emotional and psychological toll that false accusations take on individuals, especially those from marginalized communities, is profound. Marcus's battle in the courtroom was a fight for his dignity, for his future, and for his right to be treated fairly in a system that often doesn't extend that same courtesy. For Sarah Turner, the unraveling of her claims revealed the consequences of manipulation. Her motivations, initially cloaked in desperation and the facade of seeking justice, were exposed as rooted in a quest for financial gain and personal vendettas. In the end, her actions harmed not only Marcus, but also herself. Her credibility shattered, her reputation irreparably damaged. This case serves as a harsh reminder that when personal agendas are prioritized over truth and integrity, the fallout can be devastating for all involved. Beyond the personal stories, this case has far-reaching implications for racial and social justice. It has brought to light how deeply ingrained biases, whether intentional or unconscious, affect individuals within the legal system. While Marcus emerged victorious, his story serves as a rallying cry for continued reform. The case emphasized the need for vigilance when it comes to handling accusations, particularly those that carry the potential for significant financial and personal repercussions. It also underscores the importance of a fair, unbiased process that takes into account not just the facts, but also the complex, systemic factors that shape people's lives. Now, as we close the chapter on this case, we turn to you, the viewer. The story is not an isolated incident. It is a reflection of the world we live in. Everyone has a role to play in challenging prejudice, ensuring accountability, and demanding justice. We invite you to reflect on your own experiences and share your thoughts. Have you or someone you know been affected by racial biases or false accusations? How did it impact your life, and what steps were taken to address the injustice? We want to hear your story. By sharing your experiences, we can open a broader conversation about how we can work together to create a fairer, more equitable society. We encourage you to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. By doing so, you're helping to amplify important discussions on racial and social justice, stories that need to be heard, and issues that demand attention. Your engagement is the first step toward creating a more informed and conscious society, one where truth, fairness, and empathy rise above prejudice. Thank you for joining us today as we reflect on this powerful case. Together, let's continue to fight for a world where justice is truly blind, and where no one is held hostage by the limitations of bias. As the story of Marcus and Sarah fades into the archives of history, it remains a potent reminder that true justice is something we must fight for, something that doesn't come easily or without effort. The courtroom drama may have ended, but the lessons learned will echo far beyond those walls. And for those who have faced similar battles, this case offers a glimmer of hope, a reminder that even when the odds seem insurmountable, the truth has a way of rising to the surface. This isn't just a story about one man and one woman. It's a call for change, for progress, and for a future where justice prevails for all.